Back at it again. Mobius Dickus, Chapter 13, The Wheelbarrow. Let's do it. It's a short one, but got some stuff to talk about. First passage I want to talk about is here in yellow. It's about Queequeg's preference for his own harpoon. Ishmael says, I asked him why he carried such a troublesome thing with him ashore, and whether all whaling ships did not find their own harpoons. To this, in substance, he replied that though what I hinted was true enough, yet he had a particular affection for his own harpoon, because it was of assured stuff, well tried in many a mortal combat, and deeply intimate with the heart of whales. In short, like many inland reapers and mowers who go into the farmers' meadows armed with their own scythes, though in no wise obliged to furnish them, even so Queequeg, for his own private reasons, preferred his harpoon. And so this little anecdote about the harpoon sets us up for what the main thrust of the chapter is, which is that human beings are more comfortable with knowledge and truth claims which are grounded in a social context that they're familiar with. So, if Queequeg likes his own harpoon, if I'm playing Call of Duty, I like my own mouse and my own monitor that I'm used to. If I want comfort food, I want Hungarian chicken paprikash because I've been eating that since I was a kid, right? We have our own little silos where our knowledge gets stronger. And that seems to imply that, again, knowledge is not necessarily like accessing the inherent meaning of a thing, but rather kind of triangulating and bouncing off certain social contexts which lead us to truth claims about the world, as opposed to like merely investigating the world scientifically as if the meaning or truth of the world is just out there for us to find. This is furthered in the chapter in the blue passage and then the second yellow passage, which, to briefly summarize, I'll read the blue because it's so funny. Not to seem ignorant about the wheelbarrow, though in truth Queequeg was entirely so, concerning the precise way in which to manage the barrow, Queequeg puts his chest upon it, lashes it fast, and then shoulders the barrow, and marches up the wharf. So Queequeg, not knowing that he is supposed to roll the wheelbarrow, apparently carries it on his back like a backpack. Okay, which is a pretty funny image, and Ishmael does kind of laugh. He says, you should have known better than that, right? Didn't the people laugh? But then Queequeg kind of starts to emphasize this notion that truth and knowledge are very contingent when he talks about the example of the captain and his father at the ceremony, when he says that grace being said, for those people have their grace as well as we. Though Queequeg told me that unlike us who at such times look downward to our platters, they, on the contrary, copying the ducks, glance upwards to the great giver of all feasts. Grace, I say, being said, the high priest opens the banquet by the immemorial ceremony of the island, that is, dipping his consecrated and consecrating fingers into the bowl before the blessed beverage circulates. Seeing himself placed next to the priest, and noting the ceremony, and thinking himself, being captain of a ship, as having plain precedence over a mere island king, especially in the king's own house, the captain coolly proceeds to wash his hands in the punch bowl, taking it, I suppose, for a huge finger glass. Now, said Queequeg, what you think now? Didn't our people laugh? So there's a wonderful parallel here between the wheelbarrow and the finger washing, which shows that no matter who you are, be you from Kokovoko or be from Western Europe, the things you know about the world are usually influenced by the people and institutions which have guided your frameworks for understanding. And that, like I said before, truth is not out there like something to be found, but rather it is contingent and created by human beings in many, many contexts. The question which should interest you in Moby Dick is there any context where truth is just out there waiting to be found, or is it always the product of human thought? Okay, I want to mark this for first orange passage because it just seems like such a classic Melvillian two-sentence observation about a random idea, and then he moves on, but it's fascinatingly stated. He's talking about the ships coming back to New Bedford, and he says, one most perilous returns and long voyage ended only begins a second, and a second ended only begins a third, and so on forever and for aye. Such is the endlessness, yea, the intolerableness of all earthly effort. And I know that anyone listening to this who has ever had to do math homework every night or study Spanish vocabulary every night, and there just is always another one without any stop, can relate to this brief, interesting observation about the cyclical nature of the human condition. I do want to talk about now the main kind of climactic moment of the chapter where Queequeg gets mocked from behind by one of the sailors, not very nice. And so he throws up the sailor, he taps his stern, I assume he spanks him in the air, and then the fellow landed with bursting lungs upon his feet. And Queequeg turns away. And of course the captain gets mad at him. I do love the metaphor Queequeg uses here. He says, "You could have killed that man." "And killy," cried Queequeg, twisting his tattooed face into an unearthly expression of disdain. "Ah, him bevy smally fishy." "Queequeg no killy no smally fishy. Queequeg killy big whale." And I love the disdain and the disrespect he gives to that mean sailor by calling him a small fish. But then, of course, we have the knocking off of that very same sailor due to the boom coming loose. I've had some students in the past wonder what a boom is. Now, let me tell you a little story. When I was a kid, I didn't much like going outside. I'm not gonna lie, dude. Video games are pretty gosh darn dope, as is literature, and neither of them require going outside. But my parents really wanted me to go outside and be a normie. So they signed me up for a week-long sailing camp. Okay, so I had to learn the basics. So here you go. Let's see if this shows. There you go. On a sailboat, the boom, as you can see in this illustration, is this horizontal bar which creates a kind of triangle between the mast and the line that keeps the sail between the mast and the boom. So the boom is very important for changing the angle at which the boat gets its wind. So it's made to shift via this rope horizontal location. But of course, if the wind is very strong and this rope isn't very secured here, sorry, that's not a great picture. If the rope isn't very secured here, this boom will start swinging horizontally. And that's what happens on the boat. And the boom starts swinging, and this knocks the guy off. And it could sink the ship, because if you really get wind in the wrong direction, not good. You're looking like you're going to capsize. So not only does Queequeg get the boom back under control, but he dives off the ship and heroically saves the guy who was insulting him not but 2 minutes before. And this orange passage, I think, is a classic passage about sympathy and Melville's kind of, serious interest in this idea. Was there ever such unconsciousness? And what he means by that is Queequeg is very humble. He did not seem to think that he at all deserved a medal from the humane and magnanimous societies. He only asked for water, fresh water, something to wipe the brine off. That done, he put on dry clothes, lighted his pipe, and leaning against the bulwarks and mildly eyeing those around him, seemed to be saying to himself, "It's a mutual joint stock world in all meridians. We cannibals must help these Christians." So once again, this just seems like a pretty standard expression of the main idea of sympathy, that even though there are differences that divide people, both metaphysically in terms of the fact that we can't understand people's internal experiences or thoughts, and socially, culturally, right, obviously demonstrated by the fact that Queequeg is dealing with someone who just was making fun of him, we're all in this together, to quote High School Musical. And now that I realize I just quoted High School Musical without meaning to, I feel great embarrassment and shame, and we're going to end chapter 13 here, but I will see you in chapter 14.